Welcome, and thank you for standing by. All participants will be on a listen-only mode until the open discussion at the end of today's call. At that time, all participants' lines will open. I would also like to inform all parties that the call is being recorded. If you have any objections, you may disconnect at this time. I would now like to turn the call over to your host, Ms. Bonnie Lipton. Thank you, ma'am. You may begin.
Hi, everyone. I hope you're all doing well today, and thank you so much for joining our Campus Sustainability Training Series. This will be the first session of 4 talking about sustainability. We're so delighted that you're here. A couple of tech things just real quick. If you're having any problems, please write it into the Q&A mode in the bottom. And so let's get started with a fun poll. Out of the people who registered, which grant activity do you think people chose as the #1 activity they would like to sustain beyond the grant? Is it Gatekeeper training for faculty and staff, dissemination and training of crisis protocols, Gatekeeper training for students, or awareness/social media campaigns? So please take a moment and check out which one you think it is. Again, the options are Gatekeeper training for faculty, staff, dissemination and training of crisis protocols, Gatekeeper training for students, or awareness/social media campaigns. And we will tell you what the answer is later on, but we want to hear what you think first. So again, this is Bonnie Lipton calling from SPRC, and I'm with Irene Cho, and we're so delighted you're here. So I'm just going to give you a couple of more seconds to fill out this poll, and then we will get started. Okay. So your speakers today are myself, Bonnie Lipton, Prevention Specialist, and Irene Cho, who's also a Prevention Specialist. You might not have met Irene yet. She's not really new anymore. She's been here for about 6 months, but she's our wonderful, newer Prevention Specialist, and we're delighted to have her. And we will be the ones being your hosts for these 4 series. And our agenda for today is a little bit of introductions, doing an overview of the training series, then our session 1 topic, adopting a sustainability mindset. Then our guest speaker, Rita Tybor from Miami-Dade Community College, will speak. Now, Rita is a former GLS grantee herself, whose grant ended a few years ago. And then we'll talk about some next steps and have some discussion. So now I'm going to pass it over to Irene, who's going to go over the tech for today.
Hi, everyone. As Bonnie mentioned, my name is Irene Cho. Thank you for answering the poll question and chatting in. The answer to the poll question will be revealed later. I know some of you may be familiar with WebEx, but this may be a new platform for others. So we wanted to go over some technical features before we get started. The Q&A pod will be used specifically to ask any technical questions at any time during the webinar. The Q&A pod is located on the right-hand side of your screen, right above the polling. You can make the presentation screen larger at any time by clicking on the full screen button, which looks like 2 arrows in the upper right-hand side of the slide presentation. If you hit the escape key, it'll return to a normal view. Press *6 to mute or unmute your line. When you're not speaking, please mute your line. And please do not put us on hold, as the hold music will play for everyone. Once again, the Q&A pod will be used specifically for any technical questions, and the chat pod will be used to share your thoughts, comments, or questions throughout the webinar. To use the chat pod, first press the chat button next to the Q&A. If if you don't see the chat pod. To make your chat pod larger, bring your cursor right above the Q&A pod, and you'll be able to drag down your chat pod. To chat everyone, please select all participants before you send your chat. Let's practice using the chat pod together. Please chat in your caption for this picture. Once again, the chat pod is located right above the Q&A pod on the right-hand side of your screen. Don't forget to select all participants before you send your chat.
So let's see what some good responses we have.
How cool was Cynthia and Bonnie also wrote down, "I'm sexy and I know it." Cute caption. And Patricia says, "Hey, darling." Lisa, TGIF. Courtney, "Oh, this old thing." Great caption so far. Feel free to chat in your caption as we're going along. And Patricia also said, "Lunchtime is over. Time for sunscreen. This is cool. Test." Wow, all great captions. So now I'll turn it over to Bonnie to discuss overview of participants.
And first, let me say, Teresa, I like how you said time for sunscreen because you had the public health response there, the public health message, and I was impressed by that. Good job. And Kimberly, I see that you're saying you don't have the option to select all participants. If you want to write in the Q&A pod what your problem is, and our tech people will help you with that. So I wanted to do a quick overview of who's participating today. And what I should have done and I forgot to do was list every campus that's participating. So now I'm just going to say it out loud. So we have Case Western, Clemson, Colorado Mesa, Eastfield College, which is part of the Dallas Community College District, Florida State University, Georgia Gwinnett, Loyola University of Chicago, Montana State, Northwestern State University, Ohlone College, Oregon State University Cascades, Pennsylvania College of Technology, Red Rocks Community College, Rhodes State College, Santa Monica College, Sierra College, Southern Illinois University, Edwardsville, Tennessee Tech University, Truckee Meadows Community College, and University of California, Riverside, University of Houston, Victoria, University of Louisville, University of Wisconsin, Eau Claire, and Wichita State University. Wow, that was a lot of names. I'm so glad you guys are all here. It's about 25 people. 25 campuses total. Anyway, so 88% of the campuses participating are public. The remaining are private. 28% of you are community colleges. 8% are Hispanic serving institutions. And 52% of you have multiple campuses, meaning there's multiple sites. 12% of you campuses are rural, 24% are suburban, and 64% are urban or town. And I am not sure why that graph is mixed up because it's not on mine. I apologize for that. But 36% of campuses have more than 15,000 student population. 16% have under 5,000 student population, and 48% have between 5,000 and 15,000 student population.
To get a better sense of who's attending in this webinar, we wanted to share some survey results based on the registration survey you guys all completed. As you can see, it's about 50-50, but Campus Cohort 9 is slightly more represented. In terms of where you are on sustainability planning, a lot of you already started or just getting started. A small number of you haven't started yet, but just wanted to reassure you that anywhere in the sustainability planning spectrum is totally fine, and we are happy that all of you are joining today. We are glad that there is a wide spectrum of people who are participating. Those of you who are getting started or already started working on sustainability planning will be able to share your wisdom with the group as we go along. No matter where you are, starting or not, you have what you need to succeed. Your participation in this webinar shows your motivation to start the process now rather than waiting until the last minute. Your team already have a lot of experience with strategic planning, building partnerships, and thinking creatively, and all of these will also help you succeed. Now, the time for the big reveal for the poll question. The answer to the poll question from the very beginning was Gatekeeper training for faculty and staff. Most of you guessed correctly, so congratulations. The good news is that we know that a lot of our alumni grantees were able to successfully embed a Gatekeeper training by collaborating with other partners and getting leadership buy-in. We will also take some time to discuss this topic throughout the webinar. Most of you also showed great interest in sustaining awareness or social media campaigns and Gatekeeper training for students. Upstream suicide prevention activities, mental health screening for students, dissemination and training of crisis protocols were some other activities that more than half of you also wanted to sustain. Now moving on to common challenges. As you can see, lack of funding or resources were identified as a major challenge for more than half of you. We definitely hear your concern and will be addressing this challenge along with other challenges listed here, such as sustaining partnerships, strategic planning, and keeping admin support throughout the webinar series. So, based on your feedback and interviews from a number of alumni grantees who are successful in sustaining their suicide prevention efforts beyond the GLS grant, we have developed our curriculum to highlight some key components that are essential for sustainability. We will begin by talking about adopting a sustainability mindset today, followed by cultivating partnerships. In April, we will have an in-depth discussion about building momentum and fostering leadership. We'll be going over securing resources or funding for our last session. For the last session, we won't be going over specific grant opportunities that you can apply to, but we will be addressing how alumni grantees have used other strategies such as collaborating with existing on and off campus partnerships, utilizing existing infrastructure. Rita Tybor, our presenter for today, will touch upon this issue a little bit during her presentation later. Our webinar will take place every fourth Monday of the month, except for the month of March from 2 to 3:30 Eastern Time. We encourage you to attend all series as each session builds upon previous sessions. However, if you're unable to join a session, we will send an email with the recording, so feel free to rewatch it when you are available. Course format. Discussion is a big part of this webinar. You will get out as much as you put in, so we hope that you are actively engaged in discussion each session. We will have 1 or 2 alumni campus grantees each session to share their wisdom of how they sustain their efforts. You will have some time to engage with the alumni grantees and ask any questions you may have. We also have homework. I know it feels like we're back in school, but Bonnie and I have carefully picked homework that will help you with your sustainability planning process. So please take some time to review them in between sessions. Homework will take on average 1 to 2 hours. We will have some time to share homework during each session, so be prepared to discuss. We will send you an email with all the homework and other materials you can access after the session, so no need to worry about writing down all the information now. Now I'll turn it over to Bonnie to discuss some expectations.
Hi, everyone. So I think it's always helpful at the beginning of something like this to say, what kind of virtual event do we want this to be? It'd be so much easier if we could meet in person and talk about this, and, maybe someday we'll all be able to beam into some place like on Star Trek. But for now, we have to follow how things are virtually. So obviously, the first thing is to be engaged and talk when there's a time for talking. We know that our grantees really learn from each other. You guys love to hear from each other, so please be engaged and share and learn from each other. However, when not talking, please mute your phone line and never put us on hold, because there will be hold music. I can't tell you how often it happens in virtual meetings. It's kind of funny, but don't be that person if you can. Also, complete the homework if possible. The homework shouldn't take more than 1 hour. It's really just reviewing a resource and then doing some writing, filling in a worksheet. Or if you have time, we encourage you to do it. It will help you. Be respectful of each other. I don't think I really even need to say that, because I know our GLS grantees, and you guys are always very respectful and wonderful and supportive of each other. But just in case, I've put that down anyway. And, and that includes, if you feel like you've been doing a lot of talking, giving a chance for other people to talk as well. And then finally, ask lots of questions of us, of each other, of our speakers. We will have speakers in each session, so lots of opportunities to ask questions. We very much want to hear from you. So I hope that makes sense, and those expectations sound good. So now I'm going to begin talking about sustainability. So today's session is adopting a sustainability mindset of maintaining a vision of sustainability throughout the program cycle, from design to implementation to evaluation, and thinking from the beginning, what are ways we can sustain this work after the grant? So we recommend adopting a sustainability mindset. This is a quote from a GLS campus alumni grantee in the Leaving a Legacy report, who says, "I didn't just throw something together related to sustainability in the end. It was an effort right from the beginning that for everything we were starting, my intentions was to continue it way past the 3 years." So from the beginning, you want to make a case for sustainability and thinking about things like, what evaluation data do we need? What stories do we need to collect? And so you're constantly showing the leadership what you're doing is important and that it would be a lot harder for it to disappear. This is how you get your funding to continue after it ends, by making that case. And it's the same for constituents and community members and stakeholders, making the case for how important it is what you're doing, and so they'd be outraged if this activity was pulled. And in a later session, we will be talking about communicating with partners. So suicide prevention and leaders and groups establish a vision together of what they want to have in place when funding ends, and should then keep this in mind from design to implementation to evaluation. This means not just thinking about sustainability when you're developing the program, but keeping the vision in mind as you implement, and referring back to it as you make adjustments throughout the funding period. And also I wanted to add, I know this will be different for second and third year grantees. For second year grantees, you're probably just getting started or in the midst of getting started. For third year grantees, you've probably already done much planning. We'll do our best to tailor our presentations and our talks to each group, and hopefully you two groups can also share with each other what you know and what you've learned. So this lovely diagram that you will probably see more than once is the sustainability circle diagram, and it goes from the vision of your legacy to creating an action plan. So creating a vision, assessing activities, prioritizing, strategizing, addressing gaps, creating an action plan, and then you go. And although this may follow a sequential process, you will need to go back to earlier steps at multiple times and able to move forward successfully. And you'll kind of see that between numbers 4 and 6, there's a number of arrows that go back and then start, go back and then go forward. And that's around objectives. And that's the larger or longer arrows that do that and that identify specific steps where it's likely you may need to recheck your priorities and objectives once your action planning has begun. So today we're going to be talking a bit about number 4, prioritizing what to sustain in this diagram. So now we're going to talk about the importance of goal setting. So not everything can be refunded. I'm going to say that again. Not everything can be refunded. It's just not possible unless you have an alumni donor who comes up to your school and says, hey, guess what? I have $1 million and you can use it all for suicide prevention, and I'm going to give you $1 million every year. Otherwise, you're not going to be able to sustain everything, and that's okay. So what that means for you right now is you have to think about, well, what can I continue? And so in doing so, you need to think, really critically and realistically on what programs can be continued given the amount of funding you'll have and partnerships and other things you can get. And if you can't continue something because you can't finance it, think about if there are alternative strategies that may be less ideal but keep things going. So thinking about what's doable. And this is good to do often and keep in mind while doing your strategic planning because, as we know, budgets on campuses are often made in advance. So start thinking soon, what do you need to think about in order to continue this? So let's have a discussion. On Campus X, they need to figure out what to do about their Gatekeeper training. They have been doing Cognito for their students, but doing QPR for faculty and staff. And they're not quite sure how to continue once their funding ends. Operator, could you unmute all our participants, please?
All lines are now open and interactive for today's conference. If you need to use the mute feature, please press star, then 6 to mute and unmute your phone.
Thank you so much. Okay, so we know that the campus has been doing Cognito Gatekeeper training for students and QPR for faculty and staff. And so they need to decide which aspects of the program should continue. So does anyone have any suggestions on how they can decide what aspects of the program should continue? What are some things they could look at or who they could talk to? And I unmuted the line so anyone can talk. If you feel more comfortable chatting in, feel free to do so. But I have to warn you, I am notorious that I do call on people if I don't hear talking or chatting. So I would do one of those things because I will make talking happen.
This is Susan Keys. I'll talk.
Okay. Hi, Susan. And when you introduce yourself, can you also say what campus you're from?
I'm with Oregon State University, Cascades.
Great.
And
thanks, Susan.
In making a decision about whether or not to continue Cognito, they might consider looking at how well the tool is used. And if it hasn't been something that's gotten a lot of use, even though they've publicized it, it might not be something that you want to invest a lot of time in continuing. Whereas if you've had good turnouts for in-person trainings, that might be something that you want to keep investing in.
Absolutely. That's a great point. And as Zoe says, gold star for Susan for being the first one to talk. Does anyone have any other thoughts that they want to add to that for what to consider for which program should continue?
What's the most cost-effective? Comparing the two programs together, what kind of bang you would get for your buck and how you would sustain it. It may be cheaper to send people to become master trainers in QPR than to pay for Cognito.
Yeah, absolutely. And who is this speaking?
Rebecca.
From
Northwestern.
Hi, Rebecca from Northwestern. Thank you. Exactly. I love that phrase. How much bang for your buck can you get depending on what you decide to do? So kind of moving, and Courtney from Eastfield College says if your state has alternative options like mental health initiatives that are free or cost-effective, look into using those versus paying for those specific programs. Yes, that's absolutely right. In fact, many of your states might have a state GLS grant and have the money to pay for those things. Also, I know that my community colleges in California, Cal Mesa, I believe, which is the Mental Health State Authority, I hope I didn't butcher that acronym, they have been paying for Cognito for all the grantees, or for all the community colleges, whether they're grantees or not, and hopefully should be continuing. So that's a great point. So we're kind of moving into the second question now. What resources, tools, and partners do we need to sustain these aspects? So we talked about some off-campus partners like your state. Who are some on-campus partners that could sustain these efforts or could offer resources or tools?
This is Marty Thompson from Clemson University, and we started towards the beginning of our grant partnering with our Healthy Campus division, which does all the prevention activities on our college, and they've kind of become the hub for all of our, we call them suicide prevention advocacy trainings, so that will continue once the grant ends. They already and have taken charge of that.
That's great. And so the Healthy Campus, where is that, like, what department is it or office is it located in?
It's in the Office of Student Affairs, and then under that we have our Student Health Center, and it's part of the Student Health Center. It's not located physically in that building, but they've been one of our primary partners in several of our initiatives.
So that's excellent. So, and that, makes a lot of sense from a top-down perspective, student affairs, student life, and you have the health center in there. Any other on-campus partners people could suggest? And again, you can either tell me verbally or you can chat it in. Either is fine.
This is Rebecca again on our campus. In fact, the collaboration that exists that allowed us to write this grant was between our master's program in counseling, clinical counseling, and the counseling center. And the QPR training is now embedded in the curriculum of the master's program, and our graduate students do the training with student groups for QPR training.
That's great. I love that. We don't hear often enough about partnerships with graduate programs, and so sometimes we hear about partnering with masters in counseling or social work or public health, and I love when I hear that. So that's fantastic. Any other on-campus partners or, off-campus partner? Oh, Brian Kasser from Montana State University says residence life. You can't say them all, Brian. Just kidding. Residence life, student activities, Greek life, student government, et cetera, they often have programmatic funds. Absolutely. Yes, you are a teacher's pet, Brian. But yeah, absolutely. Greek life especially, they have funding. Well, most of the time they do have funding. And on many campuses, it's part of their chapter. They have to do community service type activities. So they're a great partner, and of course, Residence Life. And so, Brian, you get a gold star too. Thank you.
This is Susan Keys from OSU Cascades again, Oregon State University Cascades. One of the best things we did for the grantee meeting was to bring a student. And the student came home and had the idea of working with the student council to try to get a paid position on the council assigned to student wellness. And we're still in the process of that. This year we've said that we will use some of our grant funds to pay for half of what that position would be if the student council matched it and then agreed to fund it full-time the following year. So we're waiting for that to get kind of through the chain, but we're optimistic so that then we would have a permanent position for a student assigned to work with our student wellness team. So we're hopeful that that'll happen.
That is so great, and I love that. I love the collaborating with the student. I love that you brought the student to the GLS meeting. Yes, students are some of our most important partners. And Maureen from Wichita, I saw that you said Academic Affairs Student Success Office, which now sees this as a large part of connecting with students to retain students. Connecting with students to retain students. Absolutely. That's you've found the great message on how to connect with that student success office. Mental health is an important part of academic retainment. They want to retain students, partner with us. And Laura Fleetwood reminds us that the next GLS meeting will be in 2018, which doesn't seem so far away now. So moving forward, is there a way to support an activity or parts of an activity through in-kind contributions? So I'll just give an example, like Residence Life might say, oh, well, we'll do the Gatekeeper training for our resident advisors because one of them is a QPR trainer. So they're like, oh, we'll just do that for you. Or, we'll copy all of the materials using our budget. So any other suggestions? And again, you can ask or you can say it verbally or chat it in.
This is Marty Thompson again at Clemson, and we have worked with Residence Life where they have incorporated our advocacy training into their orientation for all their resident advisors. And this was the second fall that all the resident advisors got trained in suicide prevention. And they partner with Healthy Campus in delivering that to the RAs, but that's going to be an ongoing activity when the grant funding expires.
Yeah, that's great. And I also see Campus BIT teams, absolutely. That's a really important partner. So kind of just to put a pin on this, my last question is, who are leaders or partners that can be champions that can help you find new resources for suicide prevention? Patricia Sinclair from, I think you're Tennessee Tech, Patricia, but I will check that. No, that's Patricia Smith. But Patricia Sinclair says hiring students to the health center to liaison to other campus groups to generate ideas. Absolutely, that's a great point. Patricia Sinclair, you're Case Western. I apologize that I got that wrong. But who are some leaders that could also kind of talk up your sustainability efforts for Gatekeeper training? Because we all know how important it is to have that champion. Courtney says academic deans, absolutely. And maybe using that earlier example of the importance of academic retention as kind of getting them on board. Any other suggestions? Okay, well then we will move on. So we could have had this discussion go for much longer, and I just want to say gold star to everyone who participated. I love it. But now we're going to move on to our speaker.
We have covered quite a bit already, so before we invite our speaker of the day, I wanted to ask a silly poll question to give some time to stretch and for a quick mental break. Yeah, so the poll question is currently up. The question is, what was your favorite childhood snack? Thinking back to the good old days, or let's try this again. Yeah, the poll question is still up, so if you click on the polling, you are able to submit your answer. The options is A, Lunchables, B, Pop-Tarts, C, Rice Krispies, D, Fruit by the Fruit. Did everyone get a chance to respond? I hope so. So Laura, could you broadcast the result for us? Julie wrote Julie wrote fruit roll-ups. Yes, I definitely do love that. So we see that the winner is Rice Krispie. Yeah, and I see that a lot of you weren't able to answer, so moving forward, we will definitely make sure that you have more time to answer. And just for the results, 2 people said Lunchables, two other people said Pop-Tarts, and 7 Rice Krispies, 1 Fruit by the Fruit. Seems like it's Julie, and 6 said other. So moving forward with our next part of the presentation, before I introduce the speaker, I wanted to remind everyone that we will have some time to ask questions at the end. So feel free to chat in your questions, comments, or thoughts throughout the presentation to the chat pod. And just as a reminder, feel free to select all participants before you send your message. And if you're not able to figure that out, please ask your question in the Q&A pod about that. And now it's my pleasure to introduce our Superstar Alumni Grantee, Rita Tybor from Miami-Dade College. Rita, thank you so much for taking the time to join the webinar today. I want to give you some time to introduce yourself and your campus.
Thank you so much. I don't know about the word superstar, but let me just say that I really enjoyed our time with the GLS grant. So I'm not gonna go by superstar though. I'm happy to be here, and to introduce our campus, let me give you a few facts. We are a non-residential community college, no residence halls. We don't have full-time counseling centers, so a lot of the auxiliary services that you might have at your campuses that you described, they're non-existent on our campus. We're a Hispanic serving institution. Yes, we're really big, and yes, we have 76 native languages. So there's good and there's bad in that we don't have all the resources. And one other comment before we start, when I used to listen to these webinars, I was always happy to be connected to other grantees, but I was always a little intimidated by all the good things that everybody else was doing. So I just want to say that let's recognize together that we build the prevention platform together. We all have different strengths that we bring in.
Yes, thank you so much for the reminder. And now that we heard more about you and your campus, can you tell us more about at what point in the GLS grant cycle you started to plan for sustainability?
Sure, great question. I'll give you a little story here. When I moved to Miami, I have a master's in counseling. I've worked in counseling. When I moved to Miami 10 years ago, I began working as a grant writer, and I retrained as a grant writer. So working as a grant writer at the college and at the school district, I realized that so many grants, they come and they go. They develop a logo, they print brochures, they form committees, they do evaluations, and then they end. Then they roll up their sidewalk and everything fades into the sunset. So at the very beginning, I said to myself, if I'm going to spend time on something, I really want to work on the things that are going to be sustained. I don't want to spend my limited time on this earth working on something that's just going to, be there and gone. So I think sustainability, it's never too late to start thinking about sustainability, but it's great if you can start from the very beginning to think in that kind of mindset.
Absolutely. Great story. It sounds like you were very strategic about planning for sustainability from the very beginning. So what programs or activities were you able to sustain beyond the grant? And can you tell us more about how you prioritize which activities to sustain?
Sure. From the very beginning, and it sounds like this is what you other grantees are doing too. I looked around to see, like, what are our strengths, what are our strong departments, and so we're able to sustain some educational workshops, some community events, some health fairs, some conferences. The main thing that we were able to sustain is a full-time position, Director of Wellness, which is the position I hold now. And because we didn't have wellness, prevention, counseling, we were able to make a case to the college that this was really important, that the college devote some time and some resources to that. So to prioritize, my idea was that we really have to work with all the different elements of the college. Another little story, when I started the grant, someone had said to me, get the faculty behind you, because they're the people that can help to give it the weight to see it sustained. And we've worked with a lot of different campuses, and maybe for the GLS grantees on the line, maybe your faculty have that strength. Maybe it's your Greek life, maybe it's your residence halls, maybe it's your other programs at the college. So to prioritize, I would look at what things are going to remain at the college, and try to embed, as I've heard on the call earlier, try to embed some of your services into what's going to be cost effective, what resources can be continued, who can be trained at the campus to continue the training, including student groups.
Yes. It seems like you briefly touched about getting buy-in from, like, the faculty and things like that. Could you share some effective strategies you use to get buy-in from the leadership and the faculty?
Yes, I think, you know, from a grants perspective, from a college perspective, the most important thing to get buy-in is for people to know that you're successful and people to know that you're doing great things. And as much as possible, everything that you do with the grant, whether it's a community group or whether it's a student group, you know, always look at each one of those people as someone who may be a long-term advocate for suicide prevention. If someone asks you to do a, you know, mini presentation or add to a conference day or add to a resource table, always try to say yes and get out there and let people know what you're doing. One of the things that I thought was very helpful for us is to do something, what I call a mini evaluation. So even if I was invited to do something that was very short or very unexpected, always collect sheets of paper from the people there. And even if you don't have an evaluation in hand, you can ask them, have you ever attended this kind of presentation before? Is this a presentation you recommend to other students, faculty, leaders? What was the most important thing you learned today? Even just asking those 3 questions gives you the opportunity then to provide a mini evaluation and feedback. Share that feedback, use everything you're doing to honor the person that you're working with so that it's something that they can get credit for, that they can get they can go to their boss and say, oh, yes, we did this as part of our department meeting, or we did this with the resident hall, or we did this with public safety, so that they can get credit for it. Again, training campus partners. We've trained some people who run psychology clubs. They have students that hold annual fundraisers to continue our ASSIST training, so we're branching out. when you do get feedback from someone, I got feedback from a woman who at that time was, she was an associate dean, and she loved the ASSIST training, and she said it was one of the best trainings that she ever had. And I asked her if I could write that down and include it in a report. And then when she became campus president, it was awesome that we had such a high-level endorsement and that we could share that with other people on campus. So all of these strategies, to me, are things that you're already doing, but probably the main thing is to be very visible with them. And now here's a little example of a mini evaluation. We were invited to speak at public safety. We spoke at public safety, but then we send a summary back to the person who invited us, copying their supervisor, just summarizing the feedback that we received at the meeting. So this gives everybody that's helped the process some kind of good, positive feedback that they can then use for their own employee record if you want.
Absolutely. All of these are very helpful strategy, and it sounds like you were able to sustain some partnerships beyond the grant. Can you tell us more about what partnerships you were able to sustain beyond the grant and how you were able to maintain the momentum?
I'll tell you another little story. We had some people that were working with the grant, and one day I was out to lunch with a couple of colleagues, and I had just come back from the GLS conference, and I was feeling very strong and very energetic, and they said we need to do an annual conference day. And I thought to myself, how can we do an annual conference day with everything else we have to do for the grant? But I was in that frame of mind that said yes, if other people will help to work with it. And one of the women that was at that lunch, we wrote this all out on a napkin, and she worked at a hospital, at Miami Children's Hospital. She was going to be retiring in the next year, and she decided that that would be one of the personal things that she would like to see continued. So we are now in our third year, and I would not have thought that we could have put together a suicide prevention conference. If any of you are interested, the link's there, and you can see who our speakers are this year and what topics we have. So it was kind of unexpected, but it was coming from a mindset that this is important, together we can do this, who can help us, who's interested. Another story that goes with this is the fact that when we got the GLS grant, I'm going to advance to the next slide here, we found out that one of our neighboring organizations who we had not worked with had previously, were in their last year of a GLS grant. And I contacted them and said, hey, can we meet? Can we talk about GLS? So they kind of showed us the ropes. We continued to network to provide the annual conference. And then jointly, we worked together to submit a grant for mental health first aid, and that grant did get funded. So by creating that momentum and working together and looking for ways to reach out for other funding, even if it wasn't specifically suicide prevention, it included the topic of suicide prevention, that really helped us to sustain beyond the grant.
Wow, such great examples of collaborations. My last question for you before I open up the question to the group is around securing funding and resources. This particular issue came up as a major challenge for sustainability for this group. Can you tell us if you were able to secure any additional funding or resources to sustain your suicide prevention efforts beyond the grant, and if so, share some strategies you have used?
Another really important question, because we know that things cost money to do. As this slide shows, we did secure a mental health first aid grant, and we're now in our second year of that, and we're very, very happy to have that grant. We've also worked with the campuses to look at other funding. For instance, many of your campuses might have something called Perkins funding, and the Perkins money is to train workforce development. And we met with social sciences, and our addiction studies program, and realized that if we could train them with suicide prevention, if this is something that they're using for the workforce, that we could use some money for that, and we do receive some Perkins money for that. We've applied for other grants, sometimes successfully, sometimes not. We also work with student groups who do fundraisers who pay for assist training. And again, my position in student wellness, one last little story here. When we started the suicide prevention grant and I was working with leadership, and I'd say, well, we really need to do suicide prevention, and they were a little reluctant. They said, well, you know, that's not really our students. Our students don't need that. And I was very carefully framed my words, and I said, I know our students are very hardworking and very dedicated and very authentic in their studies, but they also have several risk factors, and they do need to have this kind of these kind of services available to them. And eventually, then we did start this Office of Student Wellness, and it does have the support of the administration. We worked with other faculty members. You know, what is it that we can do? What is it that we can continue? Another question for funding ideas is, like I said earlier, to look at things that are maybe broader than suicide prevention, but to make that part of the application, to keep reviewing newsletters and what funding sites. And now I know this third point here is to ask your resource development department to do a funding search. I realize that smaller schools wouldn't necessarily have a grants department, but if you do, put some pressure on them and ask them to please help you come up with some ideas for funding searches. Community foundations usually give money targeted for special circumstances. We have someone in the county who had lost a family member to suicide, and they paid for suicide prevention training at private schools, and that wasn't really through our GLS, and it's not really through my office now. But there are people in the community who have been touched who, if they have an opportunity, may provide funding. The other thing is when you're working with partners, you don't realize how many benefits you bring into, you may not realize that when you're working with a partner and you say you apply for the funding, but we want you to know at the college we can provide you participants, we can provide you the site, we can help to promote the training, strengthen your case with them so that they see you as someone who they really want to be part of their grant application. Tell them that you can help with letters of support, and you also might want to look at social media, GoFundMe, creative accounts that through maybe student clubs or Greek clubs that you can look for funding. One of my last slides here is if you do have a list of funding opportunities, develop them in a table format with the due dates, and here's just a sample table of some of the funding, how you might want to put down those funding sites. It was important for us, too, to make sure that we started this conversation early. The year before the grant concluded was the year that we needed the college to endorse a new position. So it's never too late to start thinking about, wow, how can we continue these things? How can we get these things written into whatever part of the budget on the college or the university, wherever it needs to be. And which brings me to my last slide here, or almost last. Be vocal, summarize your evaluations, always build up others, be open to new possibilities, welcome partnerships, don't be afraid to show your passion for prevention. And before I created these slides, I reread the Suicide Prevention, Leaving a Legacy. Wonderful information from Suicide Prevention Resource Center, and I thank them for this opportunity to share these thoughts. So thank you.
Thank you so much for the presentation, and leaving a legacy was part of the homework, so it seems like Rita found it very helpful for our next session, so feel free to go back and reread it at any time. And we do have an offline question from Julie, but feel free to type in any other questions or ask questions verbally as we answer the next one. So Julie Eben asked, how were you able to partner with the state GLS grantee? Rita, would you be able to answer this?
I really didn't. I'm not sure that we have a state GLS grantee, and if we do, 100,000 forgiveness and pardons. We looked at GLS grantees who are, you know, the website lists current and former, and when we've done things, we've invited them to be part of our programming.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think there may have been some, like, I think Julie might have been, like, asking about the, regarding the trainings or mental health first aid initiatives that you were able to tag along with. And so thank you so much for clarification. And I wanted to open up the line to everyone to ask any questions. So operator, could you please open up the line for everyone?
All lines are now open and active. If you need to use the mute feature, please press star then 6 to mute and unmute your phone.
I see that somebody wanted the conference link, so I'm going to go back to that slide.
Yes, and we will also be sharing the slide after the webinar, Courtney, so feel free to grab the link from there, but Rita can also go back in. Let me see if we can copy and paste this.
If anybody wants to Google it, Nicholas Children's Hospital Suicide Prevention Conference, and what it lists is, you know, the different speakers. Last year, we ended up having someone that spoke about suicide prevention with transgender youth, and it was just such a good conference. And that's another way you might be able to find some money. It turns out that the hospital that we partnered with, they do a grand rounds presentation every month, and so they do have some funding. So the person they use for their grand rounds, we then were able to use as like the first speaker in our day-long conference. And so they were able to provide funding that we didn't have. And again, look at your community partners as far as their mission statements. Some of them are supposed to work with other community partners, and then you're helping them reach their plans too. Okay, the link is...
Oh, I chatted the link for everyone, so you can find the link on the chat pod. So before I have like one last minute for any like quick question for Rita. Does anyone have any questions that you want to ask her before we let her go?
Rita?
Yes.
Hi, this is Kimberly Smullen from University of Houston, Victoria. I had a question. Did I understand correctly that you started a suicide prevention conference where you're at?
Yes.
Okay, and how did you, did you just say, like, I know you said you wrote it all down on a napkin and it kind of just unfolded like that. Did you, like first have a meeting and invite just different community members? How did it, I guess, if you could...
How did it start? We had a woman that was like on our steering committee, and we all decided that we were extremely interested in suicide prevention. This woman and one other woman, I said, yes, we can do a conference if you guys are willing to be in charge of this conference committee. She was retiring from a hospital, and she asked her director of education, could we have a meeting? Could we talk about how we could collaborate? So then we got her nonprofit organization on board, and then we met probably monthly for a whole year, and we have someone from the school district, someone from the hospital, someone from the grant that I had at that time, a counselor, and we just kept bringing more people on, and we'd flesh out what we thought the conference would look like and what presentations we wanted, then we'd rearrange it, then we'd do it again. And so I think it's a matter of going where the energy is, inviting people who are committed to it, finding out the time, the place, the overall topic, and then what we do with, like, the school district and the college, we allow them to have, we call it a scholarship. They have a discounted rate. We advertise it to educators and mental health practitioners, and it kind of grew according to, kind of organically, I guess, but my email's at the end of the slide, so feel free, anybody that wants more information, I can send you our brochures from the last couple of years. Maybe it'll spur some ideas. I hope that answers your question.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you.
Yes, and we have another quick question offline. Rita, do you have any advice concerning the time of the academic year that works best for on-campus conference? We have found that, yeah, we have found don't do anything in the spring, don't do anything in, you know, look at the week, and we found that, like, the third week of February seems to work best for us, the fourth week of February. But what we do when we pick a date, we make sure there's no college holiday that week or the week before or the week after, because for some reason, if there's even one day off, people are off schedule and behind schedule. We make sure there's no holiday with the K through 12 school district in that same time frame. Nothing after April, because once you get into May, you're doing all the graduations and commencements and honors and banquets. For us, February seemed to be a good time. I don't know, sorry for those of you that are in these terrible weather climates. I was just in Wisconsin. I don't know if February is the best time for you, but for Southern Florida, it was a good time. Oh, yeah. Southern Florida, probably great time all year round. So jealous.
Oh, no, the summers are terrible. They're brutal. They're really hot. You just have to run from your car to your air conditioning. So, no, it's not always perfect. I got it.
Rita, thank you so much for sharing your wisdom with the group. It's always a pleasure to hear about how alumni grantees are sustaining their efforts. Thank you so much for sharing your contact information. We will make sure to share that with the grantee so you guys can separately email her or anything if you have any further questions. And for our next part of the discussion. Yeah, thank you.
So for our next part of the discussion, Laura, could you make Irene Cho the presenter on WebEx? So the next part of the presentation is that we will be doing, filling out a worksheet together. What could be more fun? Nothing. And so we're going to keep the phone lines open in case some people have thoughts or questions. And I'm going to call on my plant, Louisa Wang from Ohlone College. Louisa, you there?
Yeah, I'm here.
Hi.
Hi.
Hi. So we gave you this worksheet to look at beforehand, and this we would encourage you to fill out this worksheet after with your partners or during your team meeting when you have time. So what we thought we would do is quickly, we're not going to go through everything, but just kind of go through and have Louisa share her thoughts for each, for one objective. So Louisa, what's your objective one going to be? Oh, and Irene will be typing this in as we speak. We're so high tech.
Okay. All right. So hi, everyone. I'm Louisa, and I'm from Ohlone College, and we're a community college here in Fremont, California. Okay, so our objective that we chose is explore the development of a new policy on requiring participation in mental health training for new hires.
Okay, So this would be a policy that would require participation in mental health training for new hires. Now, is that like Gatekeeper training?
Yeah, so Gatekeeper training and, that's pretty much that mental health training. So what we did was we worked with our HR department to have them include a section on their new employee portal where each new hire would be encouraged to complete a cognito training, to peruse our crisis protocol handbook, and to include a 2-sentence verbiage in their syllabi, since they're about to be new faculty, on mental health services and how to get more information if their students needed it, and pretty much that. So that is what our goal was,
And so is this, this worksheet is for sustainability. Is this an objective that you've managed to get started? Have you been able to have the development of this policy, or is it still in the works?
Yeah, so right now, currently, we are able to work with our HR to include it in their new employee portals. However, what we're trying to work with is having them require our new employees or new hires to complete all 3 of those objectives, more so having each new hire complete a cognito training. So that's what we're working on. So we're halfway there.
Okay.
So that's something what we want to sustain, and it's looking good so far. Whether they're going to require our new hires to complete the training is one thing, but I think it's already a big win to have them include it in their portal.
Yeah,
so that the new hires can take a look at it. And, as a new employee, everyone wants to be the good employee and look at everything that your employer provides you. So, of course, they're more likely to look at it.
And so what big picture, we have what big picture long-term outcomes are associated with each outcome? Well, it sounds like the first one is that it's in the new hire, I'm blanking on the word you just said, that everyone has to do it.
Portal? So
yes, portal.
Yeah, and so our long-term outcome would just be increasing the capacity building among our staff and new hires. So that's more of our question. So increasing the capacity for new hires and staff.
And any other long-term outcomes?
That's pretty much what we are hoping, that they complete the trainings and they include mental health language in their syllabi, and just continue to go through the crisis protocol handbook as a good resource. So those were our 2.
So what would success look like here for sustainability efforts? And so Aloni, you're in the 3rd year of your grant, so you're getting close to the end. So what would success look like?
So success would just look like HR including these requirements in their new employee portal /checklist every time, and they're not going to remove this section in their portal, and just pretty much have them required to complete it.
And what about buy-in? That so you have the buy-in from HR that they're including it, and you're hoping that they won't remove it in the future. What about buy-in from new hires, that they'll do it and be willing to do it? Because it's not currently mandatory, right?
It isn't. And one thing that we aren't able to have access to is finding out how many have been encouraged to complete it or how many have completed, because there's no data tracking for that link. However, we've heard from new hires that they do see that section. Some of them have completed it and some have not. So I don't know if that answers your question, but it's pretty much on there, and I think new employees are encouraged to take it, but there's nothing mandatory, and we only have buy-in from HR, so I'm not sure who else would be the person that we need to be in contact with to further have buy-in.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Okay, and would you say this objective is high, medium, or low priority to continue in order to accomplish your long-term outcomes?
We would consider it a high priority because this would bring mental health awareness to the new hires, but also provide training to the new hires on how to recognize and support students at risk who are experiencing mental health challenges. So we would consider it a high priority and not high cost. Actually, there's no cost involved, so high priority.
Oh, then that's the best thing ever.
I know.
Whenever there's no cost, that's always the best.
Yeah.
And so we've talked a little bit about the challenges for sustainability. Yeah. What other challenges have we not touched upon?
That was the only challenge that I came about was not HR not being willing to require the new hires to include the mental health language and complete the Cognito training. Yeah, so that was the only challenge I came about for that one.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
And is there any, and are you feeling confident that, because I know it's Cal Mesa who's funding Cognito, that they'll continue to fund Cognito for Ohlone and other community colleges?
Yeah, so right now it's looking good where we may have additional funding, but we haven't heard confirmation. And so if it isn't Cognito training, then maybe we will work with HR to provide some sort of training through our health center or program where we can work with our county crisis support services. So that's one of our other things that we've done is we've worked with that community resource to have them send someone over to our campus to provide mental health first aid training or some sort of training to specific departments. So if Cognito isn't something that they're able to sustain after the grant funding, then we would work with our crisis county department to provide training that way. And maybe we can have them come to our campus twice every academic year to provide a training to our new hires. So that's something that we could do if there's no more Cognito.
Okay, great.
Long-winded answer.
No, yeah. It was not. And what priority ranking would you give this?
Priority ranking 1 to 2.
Awesome.
It's not too high. Yeah.
So I hope this was helpful for everyone. I know when I'm given a sheet with things like goals and objectives, it helps me to see someone else fill it out, and it spurs my ideas. So hopefully it will also spur your ideas when your team meets to fill this out later on in the process. Were there any questions for Louisa, either verbally or you can chat them in about this? Okay, so I'm going to move on just because we have other things. So the next thing we're going to do is go through all the slides really quickly. There we go. And now we're going to talk about next steps. So our plan for this 4-part series is, to always end with talking about next steps, to give you some concrete action items on what you can do next. So this is going to be just a chance for everyone to talk. Again, you can say things verbally or write it in, but I will be calling on people if no one talks. So let's hear from all of you. What was the biggest take-home message that you got today? And again, you can chat it in. Lisa Thompson-Gibson said, I need to bring the conversation to the grant team. Great. So is that kind of what you're saying is that you want to share this all with the grant team to say what you've learned and hear their thoughts about it? Oh, you added, in other words, it needs to be a group discussion. Sorry, I have a very small chat window, and it's a real pain for me to even see anything. Okay. And also to get a plan in place. Mark Green says it's vital to prioritize and be selective about what's most effective. Yes, Mark, if we told you one thing today, that was it. You got to prioritize and be selective because you can't sustain everything. Mark, you get a gold star. Patricia Sinclair said, like in nursing, discharge planning starts at admission. Sustainability planning starts at the beginning. Patricia, I love that. I love how you made that connection. That is really awesome. Also, I learned some things about nursing right then because I didn't know that. So absolutely. Courtney said, I love the idea of buy-in, practice of sharing feedback from each presentation. Oh, good. Great to hear that. Teresa said from Tennessee Tech, I believe, think way outside of the university box. Yes. Always think about who your community partners are. You know, for example, Luisa Oloni was saying how Cal Mesa pays for their cognito for all the community colleges. Obviously, that's only for California, but there's definitely state, county, and local partners. Kimberly agrees, more collaboration with outside organizations. Great. So these are all great ideas. Was there anything else? Any other take-home messages before I move on to the next step? Okay, so we talked a bit about partners. What's something you can do with your partners before our next meeting? And our next meeting is February 27th. And so what's something you can do with them? And again, you can say this verbally or you can chat it in. So one thing people can do is you can go to the SPRC website, sprc.org/grantees, I think, and you can see if your state has a state GLS grantee. And if they do, you could contact that person and say, hey, we're a campus grantee. How could we partner together? Are you all doing some trainings? Have an AMSR training we could take part of? That's one thing you can do. So feel free to chat in. I'm not exactly sure if the, Laura, could you unmute the phone lines if they're not unmuted? Could someone chatted in that we're muted?
All lines are currently open and interactive. If your phone is muted, please press star then 6 to unmute your line.
Okay, so you guys just aren't talking. It's not that the line was muted. Good to know. Teresa from Tennessee Tech says, acknowledge, communicate, repetition is integration about needs and goals. Absolutely. So hopefully this is something you can talk about with your partners, maybe if you have an advisory council meeting or one-on-one meetings. And then our last question is, what's something you need to research to learn more about before the next meeting? So I gave an example of looking up to see if your state has a GLS grantee that you could partner with. And Wendy Fortner from Sierra, kind of about the previous question, said, work with local counseling group to continue small group therapy on campus for fall 2017. That's great. Thanks, Wendy. Some other partners is you could see if there's some local NAMI, National Alliance for Mental Illness, or AFSP, American Foundation for Suicide Prevention, local chapters that you could partner with and talk to. So that's something to research. What else are things that you could research before our next meeting that you'd like to learn more about? And by the way, our next meeting topic will be about partnerships. So another suggestion is find out about State Suicide Prevention Coalition. Yep, absolutely. Even if your state doesn't have a GLS grant, they probably have a State Suicide Prevention Coordinator and a State Suicide Prevention Coalition. And is there anything else that people have suggestions about to research? Okay, well, we are going to move on then to wrap up. Oh, you know what, sorry, just one more comment. Discuss potential programs they currently have or plan to have as a way to combine programs to create opportunities for funding. Yes, that's a fantastic idea. So, wrapping up, your homework is to view step 4 of the Virtual Learning Lab collaborations. And you can see the link right there, www.sprc.org/collaboration. And step 4 is sustain partnerships. Now, if you have time and you want to do the entire Learning Lab, that's absolutely fine. It shouldn't take longer than an hour to do for the entire thing, so that kind of gives you a sense of how long it will take to just do step 4. That's 15 minutes. So do that, and then there's a worksheet, Engage Partners Consistently and Creatively, that we ask you to download and look at and just think about. You can either fill it in with your partners or not, but take a moment to think about it before our next meeting. And then if you haven't done your member profile, please send that to me and we'll put it on the website. So the website is glscampussustainability.com. If you click on participants, it will open a big PDF file that has pictures of all the different campuses and who's participating. And we know that you guys really love to know who each other are and what everyone's doing, so I really encourage you to go and look at that before the next meeting. I'm sorry it wasn't up and running in time before this meeting. Meeting notes and presentations will be posted on the SPRC website in a few days, and we'll send out an email once it's ready. And we encourage you to keep in touch in between meetings if you have questions or anything. In every email I send out, there's an Excel spreadsheet that has the email addresses of everyone on it. Feel free to use that to respond to people and ask questions. So that's everything for our next meeting, which again will be February 27th from 2 to 3:30 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. You should have a calendar invite for that. If not, please let me know. Irene, is there anything else I forgot to add?
Nope, I think you covered everything. Our contact information is also at the very end of the presentation, so feel free to email us or read us. Contact information is also included.
Yes, thank you. And before we log off, are there any last questions, concerns, comments, thoughts, wishes? Oh, okay. Here's the homework slide again. And again, I will be sending out an email. No, I'm the presenter. Sorry. There we go. So here's the homework slide again, but like I said, I will be sending out an email with that on it. Any other questions, comments, thoughts, dreams for the future?
Thank you for joining, Lisa. We hope that was helpful for everyone.
Yes, we hope this was helpful. We'd love to hear your thoughts and feedback. So with that, I will end this. I hope everyone has a wonderful day and evening, and we will talk to you in a month. Thanks so much for joining. Bye-bye.
Concludes today's conference. Thank you for participating. You may disconnect at this time.